Greetings and welcome to Applying GIS to Issues of National Importance, the fourth and final in our 2017 series of Modernizing National Government webinars, addressing how national governments are utilizing modern GIS technology to more effectively and efficiently meet the needs of their citizens. My name is Kathleen Ojo. I'm a marketing specialist here at Esri, and I will be your moderator today. The webinar is being recorded. We will send you an email afterward to point you towards the recording if you'd like to view it again or share it with your colleagues. There will be 2 question and answer sessions during the webinar, followed by one at the end. You can type your questions into the question window and we will address them at the appropriate time. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers today. Mark Zeigen is the National Government Industry Manager for Mapping and Statistics here at Esri. Mark has over 33 years of experience working in GIS and mapping, including management positions at Esri, Navtech, and Rand McNally. Mark is actively participating on the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management and the Board of Directors of the International Map Industry Association Americas. Brian Pearsall is a solution engineer on the National Government Mapping and Statistics team. Brian has worked in the GIS industry since 2002, with specific focus on empowering customers with the capabilities of GIS. Prior to becoming a solution engineer, his primary domain was developing hard copy finishing workflows for defense and intelligence customers with ArcGIS for desktop and Workflow Manager for ArcGIS. His work is now centered around meeting with national mapping organizations worldwide to discuss how Esri's mapping and charting solutions for civilian topographic, defense, maritime, and aviation can help them to effectively meet their country's production goals. Tasha Shaw has been working with Esri's Washington, D.C. regional office for over 20 years, serving first as an instructor and then joining the solution engineer team. Tasha demonstrates how the ArcGIS platform brings business value to address critical challenges facing our customers, helping them create responsible and sustainable solutions. She currently supports the federal civilian team with custom demonstrations of the ArcGIS platform and has been focusing on WebGIS, apps, open data, and dashboards. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who will review the agenda and jump into our topic for today. Mark?
Thanks, Kathleen. In this Modernizing National Government webinar series, we've been demonstrating how to use ArcGIS as a platform to manage all the collection, production, and sharing of your information products. In this final webinar, we'll be looking at applying GIS to issues of national importance. We'll be covering the use of portals to share information and collaborate with your key stakeholders with the purpose of addressing national challenges. We will provide a use case for delivering that information to support disaster response, and we'll be demonstrating a product on demand for self-service mapping. Many organizations are challenged with sharing their information most effectively, including how to best share our authoritative information to support decision makers, how to ensure our organization is collaborating on the most important issues our nation is facing today, how we can make our information products available on demand 24/7 for self-service mapping. Today, we're going to show you how portals can give you the effective way of not only sharing information, but also collaborating on important issues. We'll give you examples of how to best provide that information to support decision-making and respond timely to issues such as disaster response and recovery. And we'll demonstrate how you can provide your products on demand for self-service mapping 24/7 to meet your customers' needs. Users want to access the information quickly and easily on their device of choice to make decisions these days. As an authoritative data provider, you can make all of your information products available anywhere, anytime, and on any device. Most importantly, you can provide a platform for your key stakeholders to collaborate around issues or initiatives. Our countries are facing many challenges. By applying your authoritative information to issues of economic development, national security, social or environmental challenges, we're contributing to our nation addressing these issues. This information can be shared to our customers in a number of ways using WebGIS. We're going to show you some of these today. The importance of web GIS portals is growing. They're expanding beyond data sharing to supporting evidence-based decision-making, becoming collaborative platforms to address issues and solve problems. They're allowing us to focus on key initiatives with authoritative information and get citizen feedback to inform our responses. An early example of this is Ireland's Geo Hive, created by the Ordnance Survey Ireland, the national mapping organization in Ireland. It was designed for providing information through web mapping apps focused on issues and initiatives important to the country of Ireland. In the words of Ordnance Survey Ireland's General Manager, Lorraine McNerney, GeoHive is a collaborative platform for users, data providers, and Irish government. It provides access to authoritative public sector data sets from across government through a single portal. It enables data-driven insight into key topics for the nation of Ireland. GeoHive provides free web-based access to authoritative data sets from 10 different government agencies based on the Ordnance Survey Ireland's web maps. For example, statistical data on education, housing, and employment, and much more. Again, another quote from Lorraine McNerney at Ordnance Survey Ireland is that users can link information from different authoritative sources all on one map to provide a deeper understanding of topics that impact our lives, offering different perspectives on location-based issues. So let me get a chance to show you a little bit of their website and this early concept of bringing data to bear on issues of national importance and national initiatives. Here we have the GeoHive website. I've gone to the gallery here, and I can start to explore the information that's here. But you can see quickly that the information is gathered around initiatives that are important to the nation of Ireland. So as I start to explore this, I can look at things like in Ireland, they've come out of a deep recession, and they've economic development is an important issue across the country. So as an employer, I can come into this website and look at the industry of employment, look at that web mapping application, and I can begin to explore that. As I look at it, I can start to look. I'm looking at the area in Galway on the west coast of Ireland, and if I'm interested in maybe locating a business there or a new location, I can take a look at Galway and start to explore what that looks like. I can see that there's a heavy population center to the west of the center of Galway. As I think about, I need, as an employer, I need highly educated workforce. I can take a look at the education aspect. And once again, I can see that we have a highly populated, highly educated population on the west side of Galway. Let's explore a little bit more here and start to understand more of what those the lifestyle of those people are. We can see that group is commuting a long distance. Over a majority of them in the dark color purple are commuting as a driver into their workplaces. So let's take a look at their journey times. As I take a look at this, this is actually the journey times. The dark areas near the center of Galway are actually commute times that are under 15 minutes. So I can actually see in this western section that I'm interested in, the commute times, 2/3 of the drivers are driving more than 15 minutes to work. So as an employer, I can start to look at this area and make decisions. And as I think about possibly locating out here, I might want to look at this from the aspect of, if I go back to the gallery, I can look at this where we've got information grouped around property and buying property in this area. So if I think about this perspective from the employee's standpoint, I want to think about what their cost of housing is. And as I look at Galway, I can see a good distribution of what the property values are. As I hone in, you can see these numbers are actually updating as I zoom in. And I can take a look at what the home values and costs are in that west side of Galway. As I zoom in again, you'll see the numbers are automatically updating on the average price of the homes here. But I'm also, now that I've zoomed in, I can actually get actual property values for recent home sales. So that's just one example of how you can share information as an authoritative data provider out to your constituents across government and to citizens to actually focus your data around making decisions. Many of you may have heard us talk about Geo Hub and this concept of a hub, and it's the same idea in the case of the city of Los Angeles, which has been another forerunner in this. They have 40 different departments that are running GIS, but not necessarily all connecting that data. The city of Los Angeles, through the Geo Hub concept, put together over 500 different data sets into one centralized system. But it wasn't just about the data. It was about issues and initiatives that were important to the city and the citizenry of Los Angeles. Things like data transparency for good e-government. Things like Vision Zero for the vision of zero pedestrian accidents. And urban planning, and many more. But these give you examples of how that data is applied to specific issues that are of importance today in the city of Los Angeles. I bring that up because that same hub concept is also being used internationally. The information I'll show here on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This application was actually released yesterday at the United Nations High-Level Forum on Global Geospatial Information Management. And the hub concept was used by the United Nations Statistical Division to review the progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. This is the 2030 agenda for the United Nations, and it's a set of 17 goals called the Sustainable Development Goals, with almost 169 indicators measuring performance on that. So tools like this are already being used in Mexico to help with their development agenda. The National Institute of Statistics and Geography, or INEGI in Mexico, is already aligning their statistical and geographic data to understand and report progress on the SDGs. They've not only developed a portal to share the information, they're also using tools like story maps to highlight facts and help in understanding of issues. In the Philippines, they're using GIS and statistics to understand poverty, again, using the same concept and these same tools. And now, full circle back to Ireland. In Ireland, they're using it to help them understand where they need to apply resources to help with issues of employment. The reason I come back to Ireland is I'm coming back to that GeoHive. Ireland used that GeoHive platform that you saw based on Arcgis Online and the cloud and Esri's cloud. They used that GeoHive platform and quickly were able to respond to the UN SDGs. And it's a requirement, or it's a commitment that the country of Ireland signed up to, along with many other nations. In order to do this, Ireland's public information was made available and aligned with these 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. So this is Ireland's public platform for exploring, downloading, and combining publicly available data relating to the UN SDGs. Ireland's progress against each goal is measured using a set of globally agreed upon indicators. Ireland also used story maps on GeoHive to report progress on their SDGs, and they'll continue doing that as they go forward towards the 2030 timeframe. So one of my colleagues, Brian Pearsall, is going to show you how Ireland leveraged the GeoHive platform to quickly create the Irish Sustainable Development. Brian?
Thank you, Mark. So using Ireland as an example, they've partnered with the United Nations and have started to build on efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Agenda by 2030, which is a call for action by all countries to improve the lives of people everywhere. The SDGs are 17 internationally agreed upon goals that are broken into 169 targets, and that's further broken down into 230 global indicators. And each of these goals focuses on 5 things: people, planet, peace, prosperity, and partnership. This website was developed as part of a partnership between the Ordnance Survey Ireland, the Irish Central Statistics Office, and Esri Ireland, and it provides access to over 100 layers of data relating to SDG indicators. The progress against each goal is measured against those globally agreed upon indicators. And here you can search for data and discover that data that's used to create these indicators. These data can be visualized and explored and also be downloaded in a variety of different formats. This is implemented via national planning processes, policies, strategies, and frameworks. And with regular measuring and monitoring through statistics and geospatial information, Earth observations, and other big data. So in addition to searching for data on the home page, I can click on any of the tiles and you can access the data that was used to create the indicator for that goal. So if I select goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth, this is going to present me with all of the data for goal 8. The catalog has a viewer that allows you to visualize the data and also a listing of the different data variables that were used to monitor the progress against goal 8. Now, spatial data sets obviously are available at a variety of different geographies or resolutions. So if I take a look at the tags, I'm able to filter that data based on the tags associated with this goal. So for example, if I select NUTS 3 goal 8, and NUTS 3, by the way, is a classification of territorial units for statistics, I can see all of the data that's available at that level. So if I scroll down and I select goal 8.5.2, we can see a map representing the unemployment at the county level in Ireland. And by interacting with these individual card attributes here at the bottom of the application, we're able to see other attributes. And this particular data set is captured over approximately 10 years on a quarterly level. So by interacting with the cards, not only do I get the attribute information updating, but the map also updates itself. So we're able to, because this data set has been captured over approximately 10 years or so, we're able to perform trend analysis if we wanted to. It also provides me with a data tab, which allows me to visualize the data in tabular form. But I also have an API Explorer as well, which will allow me to programmatically interact with the data via a GeoJSON interface. So this allows me to build up a query. This allows me to build up a query and hit the put a couple of spatial inputs, whether I want it based on a spatial filter, whether I wanted to parameterize some of the output options. But it also allows me, again, to give me that GeoJSON file, which programmers can then use in their JavaScript-enabled websites. Now, we also have the ability to, as Mark mentioned, showcase the progress against each of these goals via story maps. And so far, Ireland has created 3 story maps that can be explored. This one example that we're looking at here is revolving around unemployment via goals number 1 and goal number 8. And this application, like all story maps, starts to present the information described in the left panel relative to the maps on the right. So Ireland will be generating more layers and more content along with the story maps as the years go on with respect to the SDGs. And we encourage you to explore this site for SDGs. Mark?
Thank you, Brian. All right, now we're going to pause and give you the opportunity to ask questions in the chat window. So if you've got any questions, you'll see in your window for GoToMeeting, you can just jot in a question that you might have. One question we've got is, how could someone, in your case, Ireland, use this information to support the SDGs? Well, the Ordnance Survey Ireland and the Central Statistics Office of Ireland, as Brian mentioned, they have partnered together to provide the statistical data, and it's aligned with the Ordnance Survey Ireland's map data. Then they identify the statistical data and the map data required to support each of the SDGs and the indicators. So now this is an authoritative information, and it's informing Ireland on how they're doing against the SDGs. And it can be used to make data-driven decisions on how they can move Ireland closer to achieving each of those goals between now and 2013. So this could be done in any country, and in fact, it's being done by over a dozen countries now. Any government organizations that bring together that authoritative information could use that and align their data against the SDGs. And we'd be happy to talk with you more about that. So I'm looking in the question window. I'm not seeing any other questions, but I'll give you a few seconds here if anybody has any other questions. We've got another question here: Is Geo Hive free of access? Geo Hive is free to access to the users, and it's available as a publicly available website with the open data, again, around initiatives. Another question: Is the data on Ireland's GeoHive downloadable as shapefiles? The data is downloadable. I would have to go look and see what what formats it is available in. I'm sorry, I don't have that answer right now.
Yeah, I can answer that for you, Mark.
Go ahead, Brian.
So yes, data is available in shapefiles, in also a number of other formats. You can download the data as a KML, spreadsheet, a filtered data set, or a shapefile.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. All right. Well, those are the questions that we got now. So we're going to move and give you an opportunity to give us a little bit of feedback based on what we've just been seeing. We'd like to pose a question to you. So in your window again, if you look under the polls section, you'll see a question. And we'd like to get your response on that. The question is, does your organization have data that could support evidence-based decisions on government initiatives? So your options are, you have significant amounts of data that could support evidence-based decisions on government initiatives. You have moderate amount of data, you have some data, or you have no data. And the results are coming back now. We just closed the poll, and you should be seeing the results. And it looks like about almost a third of you have significant amounts of data that you could support, you could put against align with government initiatives for evidence-based decision making. Well, it looks like about a quarter of you have moderate amounts of data. So that means a majority of you have data that could be applied to this. And it looks like a little over a third of you, about 36%, have some data. And there's only about 8 of you that don't have data that you think could apply to this. So that's kind of an interesting perspective here. So thank you for your input. We appreciate that. We're going to go to our next section here. We've seen how WebGIS can be applied to issues of national importance and provide a platform for collaboration on important issues. Now we're going to look at how WebGIS can be employed quickly to respond to events like disasters. We've seen many disasters here in the United States in the last 4 months. Esri has a disaster response program that works with our customers to share and collaborate on web maps and apps in a disaster. They've been busy in the last 4 months responding to hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, as well as wildfires and flooding. I know this because this emergency response team or disaster response team sits across the hall from me, and I've watched them working pretty much around the clock. They've been working with our customers to collaborate on some of the following web apps and other information products that are helping inform government and citizenry in these disasters. Here's an example of a resource catalog with web maps and apps. For example, this dashboard app with power outages, including the number of customers affected and where they're affected by power outages. Providing a WebGIS dashboard showing the path of the hurricane and the geographic locations affected and the locations and status of the shelters. Now, to get to the shelters, you need to know what the traffic conditions are. So, such as road closures, accidents, or other incidents. Authorities can communicate the geographic areas identified by levels of expected severity of conditions to better inform the public and with evacuation warnings. The U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, used the Story Map app to provide spatial decision-making support for FEMA leadership and to the public. This included current information from stream gauge sensors and NOAA flood watches and warnings. WebGIS was also used to brief officials, including President Trump, as seen in this picture. Based on our experience responding to disasters, my colleague Tasha Schell quickly stood up a disaster response and recovery portal in less than 2 days. However, she set out to make it intuitive for the user and easy to find the appropriate information based on the user's role. As we see to the right, first you choose the disaster that you're involved in. In this case, you could be Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Irma or Hurricane Maria. Then, as you look at the bottom, you choose the role that you are. Are you a survivor that's involved in the event? Are you GIS support staff that's supporting information products out to the public? Or are you an emergency manager or responder? So now Tasha is going to show you more of how she did this. Tasha?
Thank you so much, Mark. So it's important to have a set of baseline data sets of services in times of an emergency. Decisions need to be made quickly, and empowering decision makers with authoritative data in a timely manner results in more informed decision making. But this data can be useful not only to decision makers or first responders or executives, but to constituents as well. After the recent string of hurricanes that affected people from Texas to Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands, we can be sure that the population in each of these affected areas had similar questions, namely, where can I go to get food or water and fuel? Which hospitals and pharmacies are open? And can I even get there? Are roads blocked or bridges damaged? What if I need to be rescued? How do I convey my location to first responders when street signs are pretty much gone? Do I qualify for government assistance? And then how do I apply for it? Because much of the data used by decision makers for rescue and recovery operations is the same data that would answer these previous questions, we set about using our open data pages to create a way to lead a user to appropriate resources based on who they are. This notional website's landing page would be for everyone, whether you're a survivor, a first responder, a GIS analyst who supports them, or an industry stakeholder. We first ask the question, which disaster affects you? And from there, a user would be taken to a page where they could access resources based on who they are. For example, survivors would be taken to a page of applications that could be used for rescue, and for looking at conditions of their neighborhood to find out if they're in a designated disaster area and then how to apply for assistance. You'll notice there isn't any list of data sets or anything that would not be appropriate for survivors whose needs are definitely more basic and immediate. For example, this Check My House app was used during Hurricane Harvey so that residents that were evacuated to shelters could take a look at high-resolution aerial photos that were flown over impacted areas, and they could get an idea of what their neighborhood and maybe even their house looked like. So that was a very useful asset that was published out in this time of the hurricane. But now, if I were an emergency responder, my needs would be different. I would go to my emergency responder page and I would select the category that I support. For example, let's say that I support emergency assistance, housing, and human services. Now here I would find a list of applications and perhaps even data sets that were appropriate to my work. So that power outage map that you saw Mark show you in the lead up to this particular demonstration, this is the actual application. You'll notice that it looks very different now than how you could imagine it looked during times of the emergency of the hurricanes. But this is a live site that is showing you the amount of power outages by county throughout the US. GIS support staff or GIS analysts, they support rescue, relief, and recovery efforts, and they need access to data, specifically in the form of services, also applications and tools. The site that you're looking at here, the Hurricane Harvey response site, was created by FEMA with some support from Esri. And it brings together a set of those valuable baseline data sets that are searchable and categorized. Data sets have been published mostly as services, and it's certainly fine to share tables, but without enabling location on data, it's not really straightforward to combine it with other data for visualization and decision making on the fly. It takes a little bit of valuable time to enable location on tables of data and publish them to a server and to have them available. And during an emergency, you simply may not have the minutes that it takes to do that. So it's definitely something to consider when you're preparing your data for publishing. GIS analysts also produce applications that are used by first responders, stakeholders, decision makers, and even the public. So in this case, FEMA created a dashboard, and right now, because we're not in the middle of an event, it does not show any request points, but this particular dashboard was used to view rescue requests in the area of Houston and the Gulf there on the shores here of Texas. So this is an app that still is currently live, and it can very easily be used for a future event. We wanted the experience and the workflow to be the same, no matter which disaster affected you. Now here I am back on the main landing page. If I were to choose a different event, you'll see the experience remains the same. Now I choose if I'm a survivor, emergency manager, and so on. The one difference you will find is that if I click on the GIS support staff pane, it will open up a new open data site. And by the way, these two are open data sites. So we're linking open data sites to open data sites. This was created for both hurricanes Irma and Maria. Because they came in such rapid succession, there really wasn't any time to develop a whole new site for Maria. So they did combine the data and resources on this page. But you'll see that the categories all remain the same. So the workflow and the ease of use would be there from event to event. So to review, we set about creating a single location to which we can point anyone affected by a disaster, whether they are survivors or responders, GIS staff, or industry stakeholders. Using a series of open data pages, we guide a user to resources that are appropriate for them. We wanted to make the experience the same, no matter which event would affect them. We also linked existing open data pages created by government agencies to our pages, making a wealth of data and applications available to a wide spectrum of users in a pretty rapid fashion. Thank you, and back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Tasha. That was a great example of what we've been talking about. So now we're going to move to another question and answer period here. So we're going to give you the opportunity to type in some questions, similar to what we did a moment ago. So if you want to type in any questions, I know some of you have been having a little bit of a challenge with the one person with the sound, another with the video. The webinar is being recorded. It is live. We've not had problems with most folks here, and the webinar is being recorded. So if you have any problems, you can always come back to it. I'm looking at a question now. Let's see. I'd like to know how to create a service like Tasha was showing for data. Can you point me to the resource for that? Tasha?
Certainly, absolutely. If you're using the ArcGIS platform and you have access to a portal, whether it be an ArcGIS Online instance or a portal instance behind your firewall, it's very easy to either create a data set from scratch and publish it, or publish an existing data set using either web tools, WebGIS tools, or desktop tools. And then when you publish it, you can also control what formats this data would be available in through the open data page.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tasha. Tasha, one question is, can someone locate using an address to locate?
Absolutely. Most of the apps that we saw in this demonstration have a little search box where you can type in an address. For example, finding my house and finding the aerial photographs that are in my neighborhood and around my house. Those apps would have a search box that you can type an address into, and it would take you right to that location.
Okay, great. And then one last question we've got here is, all these apps are based on internet access. What if the responder doesn't have access to the web?
That's actually a very excellent question. There are many applications that can be built with offline access, and folks that were within these hurricane situations or in the western US wildfires that we experienced recently were able to create maps and take them, and apps too, and take them offline by loading only those pieces of data that they need onto their particular mobile device. So yes, that is absolutely an important consideration. And when creating apps for first responders, it's definitely something to take into consideration.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Tasha. And there was one other question about the URL you showed, but one of our listeners has already typed that URL in there, so thank you for that.
Awesome.
And we're going to move on to the poll question and get some more feedback. This is our second of the two that we're going to give you the opportunity to talk to. So as you can see from the question in the window, to what extent would a portal focused on issues or initiatives benefit your organization or your key stakeholders? So it could be significantly benefit, moderately benefit, have some benefit, or not be applicable. So the response from you is that about 57% significantly benefit could benefit from focusing issues on and initiatives for your organization or key stakeholders. About 30% of you will be a moderate benefit, and about 15 some benefit. What's interesting is that no one put not applicable. So this is applicable to some degree to all of you, and a majority of you it's significantly benefit. And nearly 80%, or over 3/4, is significant to moderately benefit. So thank you for the feedback on that. That's very useful and I think interesting for us. Helps us know that we are on track with this. In our third section that we're going to talk about, it's about product on demand. It's these days users want access to current information quickly and easily on their device of choice. As we mentioned earlier, we can provide them with the ability to generate product on demand of their choosing. So you can see some examples here of selecting the type of products they want. Esri enables our users to create standardized map products on demand, anywhere, anytime, and on any device, from the most up-to-date or your most up-to-date authoritative data. For example, in Hurricane Irma in Florida that Brian just personally experienced, there are many changes that needed to be reflected immediately in the authoritative data. Closed roads, damaged facilities, and infrastructure. Anyone with access to this app could create their own products on demand from that authoritative, updated, authoritative information. Users can do this by simply accessing the product on demand app from any device, defining their area of interest and the information product that they needed from the up-to-date authoritative information. The user then gets in return a standard looking map. In this case, it's a USGS 7.5 minute quad looking map, but it could be any number of things. And they access this standard map through a web app with up-to-date information. This product on demand app was used in hurricanes Harvey and Irma to deliver thousands of up-to-date maps from government agencies. Now, Brian will show you how your authoritative content can be produced at any time by your customers through a product on demand app 24/7. Brian?
Thank you, Mark. So Product on Demand, or POD, is a JavaScript application that uses Esri's production mapping for Arcgis server. And it's a mapping application that allows authoritative content producers to share information outside of their GIS. And it produces hard copy products which complement web maps. So let's consider a use case for POD. So a user has a need to go in and create a map to support an event, say a search and rescue mission, but it really could be anything. So I can select any product, and this is going to be giving me a standardized map based on authoritative content. As I've been selecting these maps, they are, as we're seeing over here, they're populating in my export queue. And my AOI, for example, may be an existing map sheet, but what happens if it falls between more than one map sheet? Well, POD gives me the opportunity to create a custom center point over any area where I've got data. Not necessarily one that's just based on my existing map sheets. So in my queue, we can start to see these thumbnails of what the map could look like before it's even run off of the server, before that it's exported. So I can see the extent, I can see the symbology, all of the surround elements, the page orientation, and more. So for my custom map, I can give it a unique name, and I can export this product. So when I export this, this is actually calling into our ArcGIS server, which has production mapping for server extensions sitting on top of it, and it's generating a map on the fly using my latest and greatest data. It's also scaling and projecting and rotating and delivering this authoritative map product back to the user through a series of geoprocessing services and Python scripts using a template map document and authoritative data that's been authored and configured by me as the authoritative content producer. This process takes anywhere between 30 seconds to 60 seconds, and what it's doing is the data sets that are being run off are, when it's completed, we can simply just hit this link, and it was going to call this map to us directly off of the server in real time here. So as we can see here, this is my custom map. And this is a nearly finished fit for use product that's got grids and graticules. It's got all the symbology that my organization has specified. It's got all of the surround marginalia, all the surround elements, and we can see here that this was literally just run off. So this is not smoke and mirrors. This server sitting in California, so it's 7:45 in the morning in California. So it's got dynamic elements, and it's got all the surround marginalia that I would expect to have using this map based on my organization standards. So another use case would allow users to come in and request maps over an area that they need it, when they need them. So I can choose something called dynamic scale. And this is where it really brings this type of an application to the forefront using non-GIS users who just want a map. So with dynamic scale, I can choose that I want an export of a PDF. I can choose the page size, and it says, where do I want to map? Well, I want to map over this area. And what it's going to do is it's going to spin this up in my export queue, of course, but it's also going to say that it's going to be having a scale of approximately 6,849,000. So based on those two parameters, the area that I wanted and the page size, that's the scale of the map that it's going to give me. But what about other examples? Using other tools such as dynamic area, we've got other tools that are available to us, such as this linear tool, right? So if, for example, there was flooding along any given river or a pipeline, I'm going to go ahead and set my scale for 1 to 25,000 PDF on an A4 sheet. And then all I have to simply do is very roughly digitize in, and it's going to spin this map book up. Now, the great thing about Pod, as I mentioned before, is the ability to customize any of these extents before they're run off the server. So, of course, these are all spinning up in my export queue over here, but before they're run off, I can adjust the overlap, or I can adjust any of the parameters of where this map book is actually going to start taking place at. So, you know, Pod is automatically calculating the number of sheets and the overlap and everything else that I'm going to need to get this product into the hands of my first responders very, very quickly. So shifting gears to another industry that Pod might be available towards is maritime. So this is the exact same application, but it's just configured to look at maritime data instead of topographic data to produce charts. So I can do this, of course, anywhere we have data. Again, this is not just based on existing sheets. This one I ran off a little bit earlier this morning, took about 31 seconds to export. And it gives me, again, a nearly complete chart that, of course, ours say not for navigation, but that's entirely up to the publishing agency. You could You can choose based on the template to turn certain layers on or turn certain layers off in the export to make simple fishing maps for the general public if they wanted to. So some key takeaways for Pod is that it's designed, again, for authoritative content producers. And this application allows those authoritative content producers to share this data with non-GIS users outside of their GIS environment. So this application can be shared internally or externally as well. And again, a key aspect of that is that it's using that authoritative content. So that authoritative content, of course, is created in desktop, and then it's shared in an application such as Pod. Mark?
All right, thank you, Brian. And we're going to, well, product on demand is one of a number of ways GIS is used to automate the production of information products and share them quickly to those that need it. Agencies updating their authoritative information products can immediately share them across their organization or outside to all of their customers. As you've seen in all the demonstrations today, your current authoritative information can be used to support better decision-making on issues of national priority. By applying your foundation information to issues of, as we saw in the beginning, economic development, national security, and social and environmental challenges, you're contributing to our nation addressing these issues. Now, we're going to open up a question and answer time to conclude this in just a minute. But first, I want to remind you that the recordings of all 4 of our webinars on modernizing national government are available on the website on the screen that you see here. And you'll also receive an email soon when this final recording is posted up there. So the first 3 are up there on this website now, and the other one will be coming soon, and you'll get an email on that. And at the end of our webinar, after we do our last question and answer period, we'd appreciate you taking a minute to complete the survey that we've got. With that, I'd like to kind of summarize what we've talked about and then open up for our last questions. So today, what we demonstrated was how you can enable access and collaboration with your key stakeholders using GIS to address issues of national importance. We showed you how to provide your authoritative information to support evidence-based decisions and respond quickly to national challenges like disasters, and how you can deliver your authoritative information as a product on demand for your customers to access 24/7 on any device, anywhere, and anytime. So with that, I'd like to open up for our final question and answer period. And you can ask questions on any of the topics that we talked about. Let's see, just to reiterate, I've got a question here, and maybe I already answered it, but what is the URL to see the library of past webinars? And what I'll do is I'll put that back up on the screen so you can see the URL. There you go. It's right there. And looking, let's see, another question we have here is, can you embed one of these maps into a Sharepoint site? I'm assuming, Brian, just based on the time that it was having to do with the product on demand demo that you showed, because this was one of the last questions that just came in. Yeah.
Sure. Yep, I see it. I mean, any of these outputs can be embedded in SharePoint, just as a regular document. Okay. In this case, these were PDFs. Mm-hmm.
All right. So it'd just be like any other PDF document.
That's right.
All right. Good. Thank you. All right. If there's any other questions, we purposely just made the presentation 45 to 50 minutes here to give you time to ask any questions that you might have that we might not have covered. So this is your opportunity to ask any questions. Let's see, another question we've got here. Are you able to modify the maps through ArcCatalog or ArcScene?
Brian? So I can take this one. I can take this one too, Mark. So in our example for Pod, we basically only showed, just for quick demo, that you can download this as a PDF. One of the download options would be a finishing package or a map package, which would allow you to download a geodatabase containing the data within that area of interest, along with an MXD that has that data pointed to it, in which case then you could use any desktop client, whether that be ArcMap or Pro or Scene, to modify or view that data.
Another question here. Using ArcGIS Online, are you able to share maps with state and federal partners, but not the public? Share via a secure hyperlink. So yes, I'll take that question, and then either Brian or Tasha can jump in if you want. But using ArcGIS Online and our portal technology, it's all of the permissions are set in the application. So as the administrator of that site, you can determine which data sets are available to which users based on their identity. So you can identify information that's available just for specific government agencies and even particular identities within that organization. Maybe there's some information is available only to specific people or to specific groups, and you can set those permissions. Other data can be available to broadly. It can be available, let's say, across government, but maybe not necessarily publicly. And then additional data can be made available to anyone, including the public. So you set the permissions and you determine all of that using the ArcGIS Online and the Esri portal technology. All right. Well, I don't see any more. Whoops, one more question. I'll take one more here. Let's see. So how does POD, so Brian, this is for you, how does POD conflict with coordinates and spatial projections? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it probably would be best, that's kind of a lengthy answer, probably be best to get with the asker of that question right after this call if we want to.
We'll definitely get back to the person who asked that I responded to. So with that, I'd like to close our question and answer period, and thank you to all of you for joining. And Kathleen, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody who attended. Again, the webinar was recorded, and we will be sharing out a link to that recording as soon as we're done. That will also link you back to the previous 3 webinars in our series, so you can catch up and view those as well. Stay tuned. We are currently planning our 2018 series of webinars and activities, and we will follow up with you as soon as we have a schedule for what's to come. Again, you can follow up with us if you have any additional questions, and thank you once again for attending.